Good afternoon, Bahamas, and education colleagues from the public and private sector. In particular, Mr. Perry Cunningham, Chairman of the Bahamas Association of Independent Secondary Schools, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Since September 2019, the Ministry of Education has been forced to deal with a new reality in education. First, with Hurricane Dorian, and thereafter in March 2020 with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. These very challenging developments have resulted in a massive readjustment in the way we conduct the business of providing education for our children in the public school sector, and we have, with the assistance of our various stakeholders, sought to develop a remodeled sector that is responsive to the new reality we all face. Here to elaborate on all of our plans for the reopening of our schools and to take your questions are the Minister of Education, the Honorable Jeffrey Lloyd, our Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, Undersecretary, Ms. Saritha Clark, Deputy Director for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Sharon Poitier, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Mr. Donovan Turnquest, Physical Plant, Health and Safety Manager, Mrs. Charmaine Sinclair, Assistant Director for Education, Mrs. Kishan Bastian, Assistant Director of Education for Career and Technical Education, and other officials from the Ministry and the Department of Education. And now I call on Minister Lloyd to deliver his address.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Minster. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Before I begin, I would just like to offer a special thanks to our team at the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education, for their extraordinary leadership quotient over these past several months, particularly as it relates to the challenges that we all face as a result of Dorian and now the pandemic. And I congratulate them and their teams for the extraordinary work that they have done, especially since March the 17th, when school had to close as a result of the incidences of confirmed cases here in the Bahamas. So a debt of gratitude. And I'm also grateful to the Office of the Prime Minister, BIS, and all of the facilitators who make this national address possible. I want to say a special good afternoon to my Bahamian beloved family. Another year has passed, and we are once again planning the return of over 55,000 students from throughout our country to our classrooms. Yet this year is different. It is unprecedented, and without a doubt, one that has brought about seismic changes. I believe that a country's health and prosperity is underpinned by education. It is therefore my desire to give you an outline of the measures the Ministry of Education has taken to enhance education in the Bahamas and the Ministry's instructional delivery plans for the 2020-2021 academic year. For the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of serving as your Minister of Education. At that time, the ministry embarked on 5 major initiatives to enhance and transform the educational enterprise of this country. Number 1, the complete digitization of the educational system, such that every school and ministry building will have full Wi-Fi and internet capability. The virtual learning platform is embedded in the digital evolution. I said that the digital evolution is one of the ministry's 5 priority areas to improve the quality of education in the Bahamas. In order for our remote classes to operate effectively, we must expand our Wi-Fi connectivity to all public schools. Our target is to have 100% of our schools equipped with fiber optics and Wi-Fi connectivity. And I'm happy to report that as of June 2020, 75% of the infrastructure in public schools throughout the Bahamas have been upgraded to accommodate high-speed internet services. The technology upgrades are even more significant and timely, considering the need to shift to online learning due to COVID-19. In that regard, a technology task force was commissioned and charged with the responsibility of implementing a comprehensive EMIS, that is Education Management Information System, and LMS, that is a Learning Management System. The EMIS is very effective in monitoring the performance of an education system and managing the distribution and allocation of educational resources and services. It includes data collection, data processing, data analysis, and data reporting. The LMS is a software application that we are using for the administration, documentation, tracking, reporting, automation, and the delivery of educational courses, training programs, learning and development programs. Teachers are currently using the learning management system to teach and upload instructional resources, and it allows students to participate in live sessions or on demand. Our second initiative was the offer of universal quality pre-primary education for all 3- and 4-year-olds in the Bahamas by 2025. And again, I'm very happy to report that in 2.5 years, we have doubled the enrollment of 3- and 4-year-olds in an approved pre-primary educational program. This initiative was launched in 2018 with the goal of increasing the number of 3- and 4-year-olds enrolled in pre-primary programs. This has been achieved by increasing the number of free spaces available for students in public and private preschools, and through the public-private preschool voucher program. Students who could not be accommodated in the public preschools in their residential area were provided with a voucher to pay for the tuition at a Ministry of Education approved private preschool. The ministry has also provided preschool vouchers to families in need of financial assistance. These vouchers ensure that the child who attends a preschool, where he or she can develop the literacy, numeracy, and social skills necessary for first grade, and to build a strong foundation for school success. To date, over 2,000 vouchers have been provided for students in New Providence, Andros, and Grand Bahama to attend one of the 92 approved private preschool partners. The target this year, 2020-2021, for this component is the enrollment of 4,612 3- and 4-year-olds in a government-approved pre-primary educational program. And as I had indicated earlier, as of June 2020, we have already enrolled 3,485 such students. Now, the ministry, to ensure compliance, has hired 3 inspectors to ensure that our preschool facilities are maintaining appropriate standards, particularly now in light of COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has also targeted improving literacy rate, particularly at the 3rd grade level. We believe that if we are able to address any literacy deficiencies at this early stage, it would allow a solid foundation that will better equip our students to successfully prepare for and pass their national exams, and by extension, increase our high school graduation rate. The target for this component of the education priority is 65% of 3rd graders achieving grades of A through D on the GLAT in language arts this academic school year. And as of June 2019, we were only 2% away from achieving our goal. That is, 63% of our students have now achieved grades A to D in the 3rd grade language arts GLAT. Our 3rd priority was focused professional development of our educators. Nothing could be more important, because the ministry is also placing greater emphasis on curriculum reform and this professional development ethic. That curriculum division has, over the last 2.5 years, developed and implemented a policy for curriculum reform that seeks to provide a clear, systematic approach to curriculum development and revision, with a wide cross-section of stakeholder input, ultimately reforming the national curriculum. This policy features, for instance, a curriculum development cycle which outlines the essential layers of curriculum development. These include the identification and engagement of education stakeholders to serve on the curriculum development teams, the monitoring and evaluating and the implementation of the revised curricula, and the provision of ongoing professional development and training for our teachers, and facilitating parental education and involvement. As a direct result of this policy, there will be an ongoing reform of the national curriculum to produce updated guides on a consistently ongoing basis. My beloved Bahamians, as the ministry seeks to deliver inclusive and equitable quality education, we recognize that those responsible for educating our children must remain up to date through professional ongoing training. Technical officers and support staff have been engaged in national, regional, and international conclaves, workshop sessions, webinars, and technical meetings with international organizations such as UNESCO, CARICOM Secretariat, the OAS, the IDB, Delivery Associates, Cambridge University, USAID, ISRA AID, and UNICEF, all in an effort to enhance the overall learning process. My ministry realizes that lifelong learning and continued professional development among our educators is key to ensuring that we are capable of producing students who have these life skills to succeed in the 21st century environment. Another very important initiative of the ministry has been increased access to tertiary level education, both at the academic and technical levels. You would be pleased to know, and I'm sure you are well aware, that since 2018, the government has granted free tuition to over 3,000 students to attend the University of the Bahamas and over 1,700 students to attend the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, commonly known as BTVI. Additionally, some 600 students have been receiving scholarships annually to attend universities abroad. Again, another important initiative is the reform of our curriculum. Over this past year alone, the Department of Education was tasked with ensuring that thousands of trained educators provide academic instruction to approximately 40,000 public school students across the islands of the Bahamas. Additionally, some $15 million was spent to support the 15,000 students in our nation's private schools. And finally, in terms of our initiative, we want to ensure that all children, especially those with special needs, will have the opportunity to receive appropriate instructions according to their ability, their interests, and desire. To that end, our special education students cover the full spectrum of disabilities, and as such, we give care and consideration to them. Education is delivered to them in a myriad of school settings and via multiple modalities. And as we are ever mindful of safety first, education always, in the first instance, we will seek to engage as many of these students in the face-to-face learning model with all of the safety and health protocols in place. However, should the need exist to transition to the remote learning model, resources have been developed to assist parents and caregivers in co-facilitating learning in the virtual environment and in the home. Online support will be made available, training videos, instructional packages, and one-on-one sessions for psychosocial assistance. Special education teachers and special education officers will constantly monitor and adjust according to conditions in the schools, classrooms, and community. Assistive devices, adaptive tools, modified instructions, and best practices for this special population will be employed in the teaching and learning process. And we have been working to upgrade and modernize all of our campuses. And to that extent, we have spent millions of dollars, in fact, tens of millions of dollars, have been expended in this area, particularly our schools in Abaco, which were damaged in Hurricane Dorian. Work has been carried out on all of our public schools in Abaco, and our post-Dorian repairs in Abaco alone has incurred over $12 million, while $5+ million was spent on repairs in Grand Bahama. We are happy to report that the Central Abaco Primary School, normally called CAPS, those repairs should be completed during the 2020 fall term, while the Patrick Bethel High School should see completion of 12 classes during this fall term, while the remainder of the school's repairs should be completed in early 2021. As I indicated, the ministry has spent quite a bit of money repairing our schools. On the island of New Providence, more than $12 million, repairing 49 primary and high schools along with 11 libraries during the 2019 summer repairs program. Our 2020 summer repairs costs are projected to estimate around $27 million. Why? Because we want to make sure that our schools can reopen with all the necessary health and safety protocols in place to ensure a safe and healthy environment for all of our stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that a critical factor in ensuring a responsible reopening of the school is for all of our stakeholders to feel invested. To that end, the ministry is engaged with more than 20 key internal and external stakeholder groups, including the National Advisory Council on Education, the Bahamas Union of Teachers, the Bahamas Educators Managerial Union, the Bahamas Public Services Union, the Bahamas Association of Independent Schools, the Bahamas Scholastic Association, and many other influencers, including parents and students, involving more than 3,500 individuals during this lockdown and COVID period. Just earlier today, for instance, we held the opening ceremony for our annual Public School Administrators Conference. This is a two-day event, and it is focused on providing our administrators with training on the management of schools, with emphasis on the varied components, inclusive of security, discipline, curriculum development, and teaching in the online environment. We believe that these sessions will inspire all of our stakeholders to embrace the new social realities that will allow us to mitigate the spread of this virus and ensure that we are equipped to function in all of the instructional modalities. Additionally, psychosocial and emotional support will be available for all of our stakeholders. My dear Bahamians, our policies and plans for the reopening of schools have been developed by following best practices as outlined by the Ministry of Health, the World Health Organization, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In particular, I wish to acknowledge the importance of and the contributions of the Environmental Monitoring and Risk Assessment Division, normally called EMRAD, that is within the Department of Environmental Health Services. I wish to highlight particularly the work and contribution leadership of the public analyst, Mr. Anthony Ryan, who has developed 2 policy documents with respect to the proper cleaning and sanitization of all Ministry of Education facilities. This is critical in this new era, as I'm sure you know, where the safety and well-being of our students and staff are paramount. Mr. Ryan and EMRAD has been superb, and the ministry owes a debt of immense gratitude for their vision and leadership in this challenging environment. My dear Bahamians, back in 1998, the ministry introduced the concept of a Bahamas high school diploma to ensure that students throughout the country were meeting standardized requirements for graduation. Students were required to, over a 3-year period, demonstrate an ability to maintain a minimum 2-point cumulative grade average, to have passed at least 4 BJC subjects, including mathematics and English, to maintain a 90% punctuality and attendance record, as well as complete community service and job readiness training. The ministry is pleased to report that there has been a steady increase in the number of students who are able to achieve the Bahamas high school diploma. In 2017, less than half, in fact, only 47% of high school leavers graduated. In June of 2019, 59% graduated, a whopping 25% increase. And as you may recall, my dear Bahamians, back in September of 2019, the Ministry of Education established a virtual school, the first of its kind in the Caribbean, to address teacher shortages in the remote islands. When Hurricane Dorian shuttered some of our schools in Abaco and Grand Bahama, many of our students in those islands were able to quickly return to classrooms via accessing lessons through the virtual school. And I want to commend our team of educators in Abaco, led by District Superintendent Dominique Russell, who went way beyond the call of duty to ensure that our children were accommodated in appropriate facilities to allow remote learning to occur. We are pleased with the progress of the virtual school, led by our principals, Lamont Gray and Samantha Wilson, and their respective teams of teachers and dedicated cadre of professionals. This school has set a precedent in the development of online resources, which has formed a valuable blueprint for our expansion of online learning throughout the Bahamas. It is this same precedent that we are following, which is allowing us to formulate our distance learning, which, of course, has become necessary when our schools closed nationwide back on March 13th, 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that the onset of COVID-19 has brought additional financial burdens on many families. With this in mind, the ministry is committed to assisting our students who are already enrolled in the National School Lunch Program with obtaining devices to enable their online instruction. The ministry has already distributed 9,000 tablets to students in grades K through 3 and seeks to assist more students in the lower primary level. Digital devices such as tablets, laptops, and projectors have been distributed to preschool and lower primary schools on the islands of New Providence, Eleuthera, Xuma, Long Island, Cat Island, South Andros, Acklands, San Salvador, Maguana, and East Grand Bahama. As parents would have purchased books and other instructional materials for their children in the past, this year, we encourage them in this school year to purchase a device instead. That is a priority. The ministry has partnered with local service providers and vendors to ensure that parents are able to purchase the devices at a reasonable cost. And parents are able to access recommended device specifications on the ministry's website and Facebook pages. Approximately 500 school administrators have already received devices in the form of tablets due to the ministry's partnership with BTC. Additionally, all teachers will have access to a device along with high-speed internet connectivity on their school's campus. My fellow Bahamians, in my presentation to the House of Assembly and the Bahamian people on Wednesday, July the 22nd this year, I stated that in all of our considerations, we are and will continue to be guided by the advice from public health officials and education stakeholders and what is in the best interests of our staff and students. I affirm the priority is to minimize the risk of direct infection of COVID-19 as teaching and learning continue, regardless of the chosen modality of instructions. The safety and well-being of all concerned remain our overriding and fundamental priority. In that same presentation, I addressed two very important subjects: the national exams, namely the BJC and the BGCSE, and the targeted date for the reopening of school. At that time, I informed the nation that exams had to be suspended due to the spike in COVID-19 cases locally and the consequential lockdown of the island of Grand Bahama. I reiterated that this was a suspension, not a cancellation. And I advised and encouraged all examination candidates to continue their preparation for the exams. I also informed parents and students and all others that this suspension was not a time to relax their efforts toward exam preparation. Because these crucial exams, which serve as substantial credentials for our students, will be administered as soon as clearance is given by the competent authority. I therefore wish to inform you, and I wish to say it today, that having been given such clearance, Ministry of Education will resume the administration of the national exams beginning Monday, September 14th, 2020, and ending Friday, October 2nd, 2020. As was previously arranged, the Ministry of Education will provide private and independent and public schools with invigilators to assist with the supervision of the examination. The Examination and Assessment Division will prepare new general timetables to be issued to schools and unattached candidates. Those timetables will be placed in the local print and electronic media published this week, beginning on Thursday. No new individual timetables will be printed. Students will be advised to use the general timetables and mark on them the dates and times for their various examinations. The marking of the examinations already sat will commence as early as Wednesday, the 2nd of September, a couple of days from now, and will continue through the end of October. It is anticipated that the 2020 results will be released by the end of November, and this will give the Examination and Assessment Division the time to entertain queries before the end of the Christmas term and to roll over the exam processing system so that the registration for the 2021 cycle can begin by the second week of January 2021. The Ministry of Education has spoken often of its moral obligation, provided conditions are suitable as determined by the competent authority, to continue the BGCSE and the BJC national exams for students who wish to sit the exams for which they have registered. The ministry has been inundated by requests from students keen to complete these critical exams and parents as to when they will be resumed. And it is the position of the Ministry of Education that the exams will provide closure for the 2019-2020 academic year, particularly for 12th graders completing high school. It will also provide certification for the job market, matriculation into tertiary institutions, and qualification for scholarship applicants. We have also been made aware of matured students who today regret not having taken their exams when they had the chance to do so. As was previously the case when the exams were commenced initially, all necessary social distancing and hygiene protocols will be in place, along with all necessary PPE equipment and thermometers. I should make it clear, my dear Bahamians, that this is the last time that we will restart the administration of the national exams. If for any reason whatsoever, the exams are again interrupted before its completion on Friday, October the 2nd, they will be canceled. Secondly, in that July 22nd House of Assembly presentation, I announced plans for the reopening of school as slated for Monday, September 21st, 2020, at the usual time. I stated that the ministry will monitor the developments of COVID-19 and will adjust accordingly. And that in the reopening of schools for the 2020-2021 school year, it is quite evident that one size does not fit all. Cognizant of this fact, the Department of Education decides to follow carefully the latest development on the health front. We all know that the Bahamas is an archipelago with different environments, different schools, different districts, different islands. One size, therefore, does not fit all. What works best in one scenario may not be best for another. Of course, the ideal arrangement for our children is the face-to-face model, especially those in the pre-primary, the primary, and even middle years. This face-to-face model guarantees their most effective social, emotional, intellectual, physical, cultural, and spiritual development. It is the least disruptive to the established routine of our students, parents, and our instructional leaders. It's easier to monitor and evaluate the instructional process, and it provides the comfort of normalcy. Since that July 22nd announcement, however, of the September 21st opening, there has been a substantial increase in the infection rate on the island of New Providence and other islands. And consequently, that has forced the Department of Education to engage in more urgent planning and consideration. Therefore, I announce today that the targeted opening date for schools across the Bahamas is Monday, the 5th of October, 2020, at the usual time. This goes for all schools, both public and private. As I stated before, one size does not fit all. Thus, and listen very carefully, schools on the islands of New Providence, Abaco, and Eleuthera will open in a completely virtual environment, that is, online, while schools on Grand Bahama and all other islands will open face-to-face. This delay allows the ministry and parents and caregivers the opportunity to secure the needed device for the full participation of all involved in the teaching and learning process. There is also a need to complete the installation of the adequate level of internet service needed for the connectivity to the department's virtual platform for thousands of students who will now remain at home in both the public and private education sectors. This connectivity was not possible because of the various lockdowns and curfews. The Ministry of Education has for some time emphasized its commitment to the United Nations goal of providing quality and inclusive education for all. And it is clear that there are some students who will not have access to devices or internet connectivity or both, including some who have no electricity in their homes. Therefore, the ministry will be providing for those students resource instructional packages to be collected from their respective schools by their parents, which will in turn be returned to schools for grading by teachers on a weekly basis. As we know, the competent authority recently relaxed lockdown restrictions, New Providence, Grand Bahama, and a number of family islands. Persons now are generally free to move about with regularity throughout the Bahamas, in accordance with, of course, health and safety protocols as mandated by the government. And my dear Bahamians, we recognize that online learning is new for many of our parents, and it may provide logistical challenges for some who may be concerned about childcare needs while both parents work away from home. We recognize that our schools provide critical support services that will allow parents to return to work with a greater peace of mind, knowing that their children are in a safe environment. And while our schools owe a duty of care to its students and have been carrying that out, we are also aware that the duty of care transfers over to parents once those students have left our campuses. The reality is this: due to COVID-19, parents are now faced with having to oversee the instructional responsibility of their children. And due to persistent health concerns on some islands, duty of care will continue to rest upon the shoulder of our parents for a much greater period of time. The Ministry of Education is committed, though, to doing its part in supporting our parents by ensuring that our public libraries are equipped with the necessary health and safety protocols, as well as the internet capability in order to provide an alternative study space for students to access remote learning. We are also, additionally, in collaboration with churches and civic organizations to consider giving aid to parents to provide a safe space for the children of their members and those in their surrounding community to safely gather and access the online learning platform. I am pleased this afternoon to report that the Department of Social Services has also undertaken to assist in expanding the accessibility of all children to the virtual school. The Ministry of Social Services will be providing internet access at all Department of Social Services and urban renewal centers to assist those clients as that ministry continues its digitization efforts. The use of these hotspots will also be made available for our students who require connectivity to the virtual school. The requirement for accessing this service is to register with social services via a brief survey. And please note that I will be giving further details on the opening of school and all matters connected thereto in future addresses, particularly when the House of Assembly meets again on September the 9th, that is, next week. My dear Bahamians, the Ministry of Education, and I announced this in July of 2020, has advanced 3 learning modalities when schools reopen: the remote, the hybrid, and the face-to-face. We know that our remote format will encompass a distance learning or online platform. The hybrid or blended modality will allow students to alternate between attending school on one day and on participating on online classes on the other days. The third format of instruction is the one that is most ideal, and that's the face-to-face model. Gradually, we hope that as the virus abates and conditions approved, we would like and we expect that our schools will return to a full-time face-to-face model for our students. As I mentioned earlier, some of our schools in the Family Islands will be able to start face-to-face right away when school opens on October the 5th, because they have no or very few COVID cases on that island. My beloved Bahamians, we have opened the ministry's virtual platform to allow all students, particularly our homeschool children, to have access to this vital resource. However, parents who opt to homeschool their children are reminded that they have taken charge of their children's education and must register with the Ministry of Education Homeschooling Unit. Students who are homeschooled may register, log on to, and utilize the Ministry of Education's virtual platform. However, parents are responsible for monitoring their children on this platform and carrying out any lesson performance evaluation. Our online platform will also provide instructional delivery to our students in the Simpson Penn Center for Boys and the William A. Pratt Center for Girls, and those students in any other alternative state that runs institutions. Those teachers who were providing face-to-face instructions previously will continue to provide instructions for their students via the online platform. And these institutions will become a part of the virtual school platform that was previously set up to provide tuition to our students in the Family Islands who are experiencing teacher shortage. Ladies and gentlemen, I now turn my attention to the responsibilities of our varied stakeholders in education. As I announced earlier, private schools will reopen October the 5th at the usual time. And I ask parents and their students to contact your private school for more information as it pertains to all matters relating to your child's attendance there. Please appreciate that whatever model the school uses, this is still school, and the students are still being given instructions. Questions have been asked that since the child is not sitting in the classroom, whether school fees should be paid. The answer is, if that child is receiving instructions from a private school, then that service must be paid for. Another matter which has come to the attention of the ministry is the issue of homeschooling. All homeschool students must register with the Ministry of Education homeschooling unit. Secondly, the homeschooling concept is not a license for an interested parent or two to establish a school within their homes and charge other interested parents a fee for their child to attend, unless that school is first registered with the Ministry of Education as prescribed by law. That school, that arrangement qualifies as being a school. And the law states that persons operating a school or intending to do so must first register with and be approved by the Ministry of Education. This is very important for all parents who may be unwitting participants in this. Be sure to verify the registration status of any such school before sending your child there. Whether the school is using remote or hybrid or the face-to-face model, all modalities will include stringent health and safety protocols. And I will seek to point out some of the major changes that our internal stakeholders will be experiencing. Firstly, for many of our students, their first point of contact is the bus, ferry provider. They will be required to carry out health protocols and ensure a healthy and safety environment for their students. Of course, you know what these are. You must have a mask. There must be a provision of hand sanitizers on the boat. They will all be required to observe the necessary health and safety protocols. Then we have the situation with the parental checks for children. Before a child leaves home in the morning, you want to ensure parents, as much as possible, that they must check their children, and staff members at the various schools must engage in self-checks prior to the arrival on campus. If the COVID-19 related symptoms are suspected, they are to seek immediate medical assistance. In the instance of our school administrators, all of these safety protocols aforementioned are listed on the administrator's website and social media pages. But arrival on the campus, again, the insistence will be the wearing of face masks, ensuring that hands are sanitized properly, and of course, temperature checks. Our teachers, in addition, will also be on a regular basis be required to ensure that health and safety protocols are followed in their classrooms. And again, we will ensure that desks are 3 feet apart, facing the same direction, that the capacity of an individual classroom is based on the size. And again, that teachers will monitor student movement. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, there will be continuous cleaning and sanitization of all touchable surfaces and high traffic areas, among other protocols. My dear Bahamians, our lunch vendors have been participating in ongoing training to ensure food handlers' safety and health protocols that must be followed in the preparation and distribution of lunches in the COVID-19 era. They will be required to wear face masks at all times and to sanitize prior to the handling of food items. Lunch providers will offer only prepackaged grab-and-go lunches to encourage social distancing. Of course, students in those circumstances will maintain a minimum of 6 feet social distance while queuing for lunches. School staff, as usual, will assist in the supervision of this process. And while eating or drinking, of course, students will be advised to take extra precaution, not to contaminate or to soil their masks. My dearly beloved, the Ministry of Education, as announced earlier, is concerned about maintaining the protection, well-being, and providing social assistance to our staff and students. Our guidance counselors will be available to provide vital support, and we will continue to offer employee assistance program upon self-referral or referral from the principal. Parents, you too, can be assured that whichever model we engage, you will receive support in the learning process. This support will include live teacher-led daily instruction, personalized lessons using national curriculum pacing guides, which will ensure standardization of the teaching of the curriculum, graded assignments, daily attendance tracking, and teacher assessment on student process. We ask you, however, to remain cooperative and supportive to our teachers as more is demanded from them. Many of you have now had the experience of tutoring and motivating your own children, remembering and always remember that your child's teacher must do that for sometimes up to 35 children in their classroom, as well as their own. Online teaching has been a learning curve for many of our teachers as well. But I am very pleased to say that they have risen to the challenge, and I congratulate all of our educators. I thank them immensely and profusely for stepping up, taking up the mantle, and transforming their instructional delivery to adapt to a novel way of teaching, that is remotely. All of their efforts have helped to provide our students with a sense of normalcy and stability during this period. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the unprecedented trials of 2019-2020, we can look back at the year with much satisfaction. That much was achieved in advancing access to education to more of our students, and much more will be achieved as we seek to provide a quality, inclusive education for all. I thank you, and I wish all of you a successful and productive 2020-2021 academic year. All the best.
Many thanks, Minister, for that very comprehensive and enlightening contribution, and we thank our television audience for remaining with us. At this time, we will take questions from the media, beginning with Altavis Munnings from ZNS. Is Ms. Munnings with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My first question is, can you tell me what concerns or challenges is the Ministry of Education facing in the remote islands or the southern islands pertaining to the digitization process and ensuring that the students in those islands get the curriculum that they need to learn for the new academic year?
Thank you for that question. I'll invite the Director of Education to answer that query.
Thank you very much. In the Southern Islands, we've commenced the process of digital learning beginning from last year. In most of those islands, we have access to devices. There are some challenges in some of those communities with high-speed internet, but this is the program that we're working on, and as soon as workmen can get to those islands, we believe that those matters with internet connectivity will be largely resolved. We have a couple islands where the internet service is completely unreliable simply because of the situation, with the telecommunications, not so much from our end. And we are introducing a device called Aptus, which will allow us to upload onto a device the content, and then we can ship the device to the jurisdiction, and then the children will be able to access the learning off of that device. So in those places where the internet connectivity is bad because the service providers are not able to provide the internet, then we are going to that device.
Ms. Munnings, do you have a second question?
Yes, ma'am. How and who will be monitoring any truancy when the virtual online platform begins in October?
The Director?
Well, again, as you would recall from the Minister's presentation, there is an investment into some software that will help us with this process. So we have two softwares, one called the EMIS and one called LMS. With the EMIS, all of the students who are in our schools their names would be in that system, and every time they go on to the LMS, that information will be recorded and tracked. So we will know when students are showing up to class, whether it be virtual or face-to-face. And if a student is not showing up, then of course our attendance officers, along with whomever else, school administrators and so forth, will commence the process of trying to get in touch with them and identifying what the problem might be. And if it's a real issue of truancy, the what we call attendance officers going out and trying to bring them back into the school community. So that's how we'll manage that.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Matthew Moxie from Eyewitness News. Can we have your first question?
Hey, yes, good afternoon. So my first question would be, so what about in terms of the national exams, what about the students who already started at the University of the Bahamas? How does this impact their enrollment at UB? We know the point of taking exit exams is with the anticipation to get into college, but if they have it already, what's the point now? Will they now be forced to take BGCSEs if they already enrolled?
Ms. Saritha Clark, Under Secretary, will address queries relative to the national exams.
Good afternoon. Those students who are already in UB will still be able to, if they wish, to take the national examinations. As the Minister said earlier, it is not simply for getting into a university, but it is also a matter of them being able to bring closure to the 2019-2020 academic year and for their own personal gratification.
You have a second question, Mr. Moxie?
Yes, and do these students still, what about the pricing concerns and payment concerns that are been attached to the national exams? Will students now still have to pay for these exit exams?
Ms. Clark?
The students have already paid for the exams, and we are going to allow them to sit the exams based upon the fact that they have paid. Now, there may be some students who may decide that they no longer wish to write. Those students will have to place with the Examination and Assessment Division through their school a request for a refund. The refund will not come from the Examination and Assessment Division. The refund will come from the Public Treasury. So that will take a matter of weeks.
Thank you, Undersecretary Clark. Mr. Jared Higgs, Our News. Can we have your first question, please?
Good afternoon. Could we get a few more details on the tablets being provided for the students on the lunch program? Any way more people can access that besides students on the lunch program? Because you may have a few more students affected by the pandemic. Maybe it's been addressed, but just for clarity, my apologies.
Could you continue your question, please?
Okay, I was asking for more, for a few more details on the program that's going to provide the tablets for students on the school lunch program. Is that going to be, is the quote-unquote school lunch program, is there a chance to extend that a bit to make up for people affected by the pandemic? Or has that been addressed?
Ms. Charmaine Sinclair will take that query.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your question. We already have a number of students who would have been vetted by the Ministry of Social Services for the National School Lunch Program. And as the Minister indicated, those students will have access to devices. But we also on our family islands, as well as here on New Providence, have district superintendents who would have indicated there are a number of students who may still be in need, who may not have been vetted, may have been vetted, and the Ministry of Education will do its best to try to provide for those persons. We will need to have additional information, of course, so that we will ensure that we are providing for those who are truly in need.
Thank you.
Mr. Higgs, we will allow you a second question at this time.
Thank you. What are what are the thoughts of education officials when it comes to physical education? You know, kids have not been in school and schools and part of their, you know, regular routines there. Some of them may have had a chance during the summer to maybe do a brief bit of plan for them when it comes.
Okay, we'll have the director take that query.
I think the question was about physical education and what do we think about giving students opportunities to engage in that. If you may recall, even during the first time when we went to virtual learning, what we sought to do was to integrate even into our platform opportunities for students to engage in some calisthenic type exercises. It is very difficult at this point for us to engage in the full physical education program, of course, because of the situation. There's also a very important component of physical education, which includes the theoretical part that teaches you about your body, diet, and all of these things. So those things will be addressed on the platform, and also on the platform we will seek to have opportunities where children during at intervals are being asked to do stretches and conduct other exercises like that. But in terms of actually engaging in, you know, full-out games and sport like that, at this point in time, it is not advised. It is not being recommended because of the health and safety component, especially for the team sports. And so we're going to encourage students to take care of themselves, but they'll have to do it on their own with some guidance through videos, etc.
Can we have the queries from Mr. Samarco Lightburn from the Blaze FM in Exuma?
Hi, good afternoon. So my first question, there are some educators who have received redeployment letters and are uncertain about their future relocations. There is the mitigation perspective, certainly. There's adequacy of infrastructure if they are moved to a hurricane ravaged or undeveloped area, and the challenge of commercial travel at the moment. How are these educators being accommodated as we consider the mitigation perspective and the inter-island movement of people?
Director?
Thank you very much. We had to make some decisions because of some agreements that we have in industrial agreements with labor unions. One of the agreements stipulates that by such a time, I think it's end of May, we have to be able to tell persons when they're going to be redeployed. So when teachers were brought out of Abaco, because I think this is what you're largely speaking about, when teachers were brought out of Abaco, they were advised that this was a temporary redeployment. So we made the decision to bring them back in Abaco, understanding that there may have to be adjustments based on the enrollment that we had on the ground, issues around accommodations and so on. Now that we have a clear understanding of what we will see in Abaco, we have permitted some teachers who have written in to say that they are not interested in returning to Abaco at this time. We have permitted them to stay either on the island where they are or to be redeployed on an island where they're more comfortable. But you have to remember that we also have a commitment to provide education to people all across the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So some persons have taken up that challenge to return to Abaco. We are working with the Disaster and Recovery Authority, to assist with housing and to make sure that people are properly accommodated. So, you know, this is the kind of balance that we have. We have a challenge, but we also have to respond in an appropriate way because we talk about not leaving anyone behind. We cannot leave anyone behind, including the people of Abaco.
Mr. Lightburn, may we have your second question, please?
Thank you kindly. And so my second question, is there going to be a blanket of leniency or for a certain period, for students who may not be fully outfitted with uniforms texts, and other supplies due to the financial constraints right now?
Director?
I'm not quite sure what you mean, because it's our intent in most instances to begin with virtual learning. We are not, in our sector, demanding that students wear uniform while they are in the virtual format. We just want them to be addressed appropriately. If and when it comes to a point where we are going to school and people don't have uniforms, first and foremost, there is already a mechanism for that through the Department of Social Services. And if persons need that kind of support, then they can seek it there. Anything beyond that, this will have to be a matter that is dealt with at the level of the school, where parents, in a respectful and appropriate way, will approach the principal, and our principals, of course, will use the discretion, understand the situation that we're all in this country, and they will make the appropriate decisions.
That's the second.
May we have the question from Ms. Jasper Ward from the Nassau Guardian?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first question is, what consideration has been made for children whose parents have to work and can't monitor them during school because of work, especially single-parent households?
Director?
I think Minister Lloyd was clear when he indicated that we are hoping that families and communities will support one another in this. Also that non-governmental agencies such as churches and civic groups would also make provisions to support. He also talked about the fact that we will have libraries that will be open for children who are able to go to the library and study. Yes, there is this concern about the duty of care. Yes, we know that some people will have some challenges, but we have to be in this as a community. We have to see this as a problem that we have to collectively solve. The state is doing its part in the ways that it could do its part, but families, communities, friends, we have to all come together to support where there may be cases. We also would like to say that employers, to the extent that they can, should consider some levels of flexibility around working arrangements or allowing students or children to come along with their parents if those things are possible. And so that, along with any other programs such as what the government might put on through urban renewal, churches, etc., would be the ways in which we see that would happen. But we want to be clear that people have to exercise some personal responsibility, and also we have to support one another on an individual, familial, and also community level.
May we have your second question, Ms. Ward?
My second question, I know several schools would have reopened today, actually. This October 5th reopening date that was announced by Minister Lloyd, how would this impact those schools that have already reopened, that already have reopened?
Minister?
They can continue to, thanks Jasper, as always, excellent question. They can continue to operate, but virtually. Okay, now, there are some schools who are able to operate face-to-face. I think you know who I'm talking about. They have the space, they have the number of students that will enable them to operate face-to-face. And if they can, they're welcome to do so. So schools that are opened, there's a school in particular that has been open now for 2 weeks. As you indicated, schools that are open beginning today, they can open virtually or they can open face-to-face, as long as they maintain the required safety and health protocols as mandated by the government. They're welcome to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Ms. Karen Bain from Global 99.5. Can we have your first question, please?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My question is for Minister Lloyd.
Yeah, I'm right here.
If you can get an in-depth information regarding the schools in Grand Bahama that were impacted by Hurricane Dorian, mainly schools in East Grand Bahama, Sweetens Key, Freetown, and High Rock. If we can just get some in-depth information regarding the reconstruction as well as the renovation projects.
Reconstruction is an issue which I will invite Mr. Donovan Turnquist, who's in charge of our reconstruction as well as our repairs program at the Ministry of Education. He'd be happy to assist you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the question. As you're aware, Hurricane Dorian inflicted a lot of damage on our schools in Abaco and Grand Bahama. As a result, we are spending $12.6 million in Abaco and over $5 million in Grand Bahama. I'm happy to report that in Grand Bahama, we have completed 90% of the work, and in Abaco, approximately 75% of the work. Now, as for your question regarding the school in East Grand Bahama, we have decided at the Ministry of Education to create one school, one comprehensive school that would accommodate all of the students that were in the East End schools. That design for that schools is being done presently by the Ministry of Works, and hopefully construction will begin sometime either the end of this year or early next year.
May we have your second question, Ms. Bain?
Yes, since the COVID-19 pandemic, what challenges has the Ministry of Education seen regarding our special needs children during this time?
Ms. Poitier?
Good afternoon, and thank you for your question. As you would know, special needs children, the ideal for them is face-to-face. So yes, there have been several challenges that parents have faced, that they have faced. And so our special education division, our special education section has been working with parents. They've been providing support through their hotlines. They've also provided the hard copy activity sheets for those students. And so, yes, we do acknowledge that there have been several challenges that they have faced. And so we are working through the special services section to ensure that those parents are given the level of support that they require.
Ms. Sasha Lightburn from Our TV, may we have your queries, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Bahamas, and good afternoon, Ministry of Education officials. This is just a point of clarification that I need for several parents who are bombarding my phone, and this is for the Minister. Minister, can you please just clarify on your point with respect to Jasper's question earlier? Schools that will or have already planned to open on Monday, they will be allowed to continue to do so once they follow those health safety protocols or are doing so in a virtual platform?
That is correct.
Thank you. That was just a point of clarification for me. My first question is for any minister, any Ministry of Education official. Is there any special support being provided to particularly government school teachers who are moms themselves? I'm not sure whether they'll be operating in this virtual environment from their homes or doing so from the classroom. Has any special consideration been given to them particularly?
Director?
The consideration that we are giving to anyone who has a challenge with working from the school campus is for them to make an application, state what their situation might be, whether it's a health issue or you know, a child care issue and whatever. And then from that it'll be assessed and then a decision made. We have to make sure that we are able to roll out the quality of education program that we are mandated to do for the students of our schools. That is important for us. And so while we want to accommodate persons as much as possible, we have to ensure that in accommodating them, we can still carry out our mandate. So, for instance, a person has to be able to guarantee that they will be accessible. They have to be able to guarantee that they have internet connectivity and so forth in order to operate. Because we operate in a virtual reality. You can't say you want to work at home, but then you don't have internet. It just can't work like that. So there is a process, and we're hoping that that could support persons who need that support. Also, because of the situation in many of our schools and students not being there, there would also be an opportunity for some parents who may have children to be able to bring them to the school. So this would be the kind of thing that, again, with the administrators on the ground, that would be organized.
Thank you very much.
May we have your second? Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. My second question is for the minister as well. Minister Lloyd, I know it's still relatively early, but the VAT school holiday would have started today, began today. Have you received any feedback from business owners or parents or teachers who may have already taken advantage of this opportunity, and how intricately involved were Ministry of Education officials when, in terms of planning this particular initiative by the government?
The ministry is not involved in that planning. That's a Ministry of Finance initiative. VAT falls under the remit of the Ministry of Finance, and more particularly the Department of Inland Revenue. And no, I have not received any information, any feedback from any of the parents, except what I hear circulating in the social media and the electronic media environment. But not particularly, not specifically, have I heard any feedback.
Ms. Tanya Cartwright from the Tribune.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first question rather is for Minister Lloyd. I'm certain I heard that New Providence, Abaco, and Eleuthera will start on Monday the 5th as all the other schools, but will definitely be on a virtual basis. Am I correct? New Providence, Abaco, and Eleuthera?
That's correct.
My question is Abaco, because they're like Sasha said, my phone I'm looking at and it's blowing up with Abaconians. They're not feeling that they're ready for this virtual thing at all. So is there something that you're going to do for them between now and October 5th? Because they're complaining they have no water, no light, some don't have proper shelter, and the kids are not able to participate this way. So is there going to be anything extra for them between now and October 5th, or do you really believe that they're ready to take on virtual learning?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I'll turn it over to the director after I say this. If you remember, when I spoke earlier, I said that for those who have no ability whatsoever to engage any of the modalities, we will be printing resource instructional material for those persons to be able to be assisted. But the director can speak more specifically as to what is being provided at Abaco. I know that, and Mr. Turnquest can talk about how soon the 12 classrooms will be available at the Patrick Bethel. How soon will the school be ready at the CAPS? So let me turn it over to them for a response, please.
Good afternoon again. The school at CAPS will be completed within 2 weeks and be ready to accept students. The school at Patrick Bethel won't be completed until early 2021, but within the next month, we will have 12 classrooms that are completed at Patrick Bethel, which can be used to accommodate the high school students.
Sorry, I just want to finish that response. Earlier, I talked about a device called Aptus that will be used to provide content to those places and persons who may not have the internet infrastructure up and running. So that is something that certainly we want to use. I know that we are already targeting Moores Island for that. We are already targeting Grand Key for that. Also, we, along with one of the NGOs who providing a lot of assistance in Abaco in the recovery, are providing solar-powered chargers for devices. And so, along with whatever internet connectivity we have, MiFi, et cetera, et cetera. So we believe that it's not a perfect situation, as we mentioned earlier. We have a lot of persons who are moving to Abaco, but then a lot of public officers who may not necessarily be going to service the needs. So we have to be able to do the best that we can in the situation that we're in. We do not want to leave anyone behind in Abaco, and we have a consolidated approach to trying as many different things to get Abaco up and running as best as we can. And we're starting off virtually, but as Mr. Turnquist just told you, we're trying to complete classrooms. Once we complete classrooms and once we have housing accommodations, we'll try to get more staff in there to be able to service the people there. So we'll do the best that we can.
Ms. Cartwright, can we have your second question?
Okay, my second question is for, I didn't get his name, the gentleman who's there to represent private schools. I want to know if
Mr. Perry
you're
Cunningham.
starting, I'm understanding that the private schools are also starting on October 5th. I want to know, besides just the start date, if the private schools are going to be complying with most things that the Ministry of Education talked about. Of course, we talked about the COVID protocols, but I mean like virtual education. How are you starting in your schools? Are you starting by virtual education, or will you be having face-to-face classes?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Bahamas Association of Independent Secondary School consists of 14 schools. And in general, most of our schools can start by virtual format. In fact, some are set to start on Monday, September the 14th. Some started earlier. And so we're going to go with virtual education to follow the ministry's guideline. We will not start, I don't think any of the schools will start as late as October 5th. But we'll start in September. Thank you.
Also, Ms. Davies, you can share St. John, the Anglican school system.
Good afternoon. I speak on behalf of our 4 Anglican schools concerning the reopening of school. Our little school, St. Andrews in Georgetown, Exuma, based on the protocols that have been put in place, we see them as starting on September 14th, face-to-face. Our school in Grand Bahama and the 2 in Nassau, September 14th, our plan is to reopen 100% virtual until the 5th of October, when we will reassess the situation and determine should we go into blended or directly into face-to-face. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Ms. Tyler Simonet from JCN.
Yes, good afternoon to
Good afternoon.
the Ministry of Education and to all who are listening. What are education officials' opinions on some private schools charging the same amount of tuition for virtual learning as they do for regular face-to-face learning? I know that a lot of parents are complaining that they believe that it's not fair. So can we hear from the education official side and maybe get some kind of explanation as to what really goes into it, and why this may be happening, so parents can have, a better understanding?
A minister addressed that in his remarks. I'll ask him to reiterate that, and if any of the private schools wish to speak to that.
Certainly the private schools are represented here, so I would certainly allow them to speak to it, but let me say simply this. It says private. Okay? Parents, caregivers have made a decision that they wish to engage their child's education in a private circumstance. And I've been, of course, been bothered by this by a number of parents, and I've invited them to please go to the school and speak to the principals of the school, the administration, and so on, and have a conversation with them in this regard. The Ministry of Education regulates the operation of private schools in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas through the National Accreditation and Equivalency Council of the Bahamas, commonly known as NACOB. We specify the qualifications, the number of classrooms versus the number of bathrooms, number of students, and so on and so forth. We do not regulate when those schools can open, and Reverend Cunningham just spoke to that a moment ago. Don't tell you when those schools can close. We don't regulate how much those schools can charge individual parents for their students' instructions. We, in fact, don't essentially regulate them in terms of curriculum, except those who wish to subscribe to the Bahamas High School Diploma Program. And many of our private schools decide to do that. So, of course, the questions have come, but it is a relationship that has been established between that particular individual, parent, caregiver, whomever, student, and that school. And that engagement should be determined, and the resulting decisions, be determined between the decisions in that respect. Now, I will say this, however. We are, of course, in collaboration with the Bahamas Association of Independent Secondary Schools. We are, of course, bringing this to their attention, and we are inviting them to give that very serious consideration. And then, once again, I invite parents and caregivers to contact the school, speak to the school, and address the school with regard to that concern. We have said continuously that we expect the private schools to be very lenient, or at least to have considerations with regard to the circumstances in which we find ourselves because of this economic and social environment that has been imposed upon us called COVID-19. But Reverend Cunningham and Ms. Davies, please address this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister. Rightly so. Our independent schools in our association, like I said, we have 14. And these are independent systems. They are unique in their own right. And many of our schools in the past several months, Minister and others, have discounted 25%. Look at the various fees, drop certain fees, whether it's computer fee or art fee. We have done that. And I think what needs to happen here is that whatever school your child is in, whether it's St. John's or St. Anne's or Kingsway, that there's a need for parents to work with the independent school, the particular school concerned, and may they address that. I think, however, virtual education means that the delivery of instruction, and our teachers in the system have worked very hard to deliver virtual education the past several months. It is not to say by any means that your child has not received quality education. In fact, what we have actually done, along with the Ministry of Education, is presented the whole community with a professional development on the platform of online learning. We have facilitated that, and that is here to stay. And so we see where parents have been helped, we see where students have been helped, and so when they go on to tertiary education, they would have the knowledge and skill of how this thing works. Yes, there's a need perhaps for schools to consider that time as some monies or discounted, and we will look at that, but you need to go to your prospective school and work with the administration, work with your school. Thank you.
Let me just clarify. My name is Dr. Neveline Evans and not Mrs. Davies from the Anglican Central Education Authority. To add to what Reverend Cunningham has said, we have organized a situation where parents can actually go into any of our 4 schools and work with a payment plan. We do understand the economic situation, and we really want to give you the best service. And so therefore, what I would like to say, if you are interested in keeping your child in the Anglican school system, please go to the school, have a word with the bursar, and work out the payment plan that is available. We have also given a 25% discount for this term.
Thank you very much. I would ask your indulgence, please, Ms. Simonet. We do have a question coming in online, and this is Good Day Yentl. I was unable to attend today. However, our phones are lighting up with questions as to why Eleuthera is being restricted to virtual only upon opening. If you can pass this question on, I would most appreciate it. Director, please. Elizabeth Bryan, Eleuthera News.
As it relates to Eleuthera, when we look at the physical plant that we have there, we have to bear that in mind with the prevailing health conditions. And at this point, we are not confident that we'll be able to provide the social distancing that is necessary at this time in Eleuthera so that rates of infection would not get out of control. As soon as conditions are better, then we will, of course, look to see how we could accommodate Eleuthera.
I just want to say, and thank you very much for that question, because it's very important that you raise it. I just want to say that in all of our decisions, we don't pull information and data out of the air and decide on a whim or a fancy what operational processes and procedures we should carry out. All of our decisions are guided by the Ministry of Health. Which island, district, jurisdiction is safe for which modality? And as I indicated earlier, we have 3 of them. Obviously, you know, the face-to-face, the blended, sometimes on the campus, sometimes online, and then, of course, the virtual. And they tell us, based on the information they have, confirmed cases or whatever, that these islands, not yet because of the community spread or whatever, these islands, safe, as long as they, of course, observe the safety and health protocols. So we were guided, and we were given basically the information, the data, the intelligence, that New Providence and so on, including Eleuthera, for the time being, virtual. All the other islands can go face-to-face as long as they have the space and as long as they maintain and observe rigidly, stringently, the health protocols.
Thank you, Minister. A second question coming from Ms. Bryan for the Director. Also, the second question by residents are whether Spanish Wells and Harbor Island are being grouped with Eleuthera in this instance.
I don't have that particular bit of information in my mind. So what we'll do is we will, through the district superintendent, we'll notify the schools in both Harbor Island and Spanish Wells.
And then too, if I may say, P.S., may I, and say, this is today, August 31st. Between now and October the 5th, any number of changes can occur. So this is where we are today. This is what we, as it were, the prognosticators estimate where we should be on October the 5th. Let's pray to God that by October the 5th, those questions can be answered satisfactorily.
Ms. Tyler Simlet, I thank you for your patience in allowing the other reporter to go. From JCN, due to the time constraints, we'll ask that you just take one question, please. I do apologize. Your first question, please, Ms. Simlet.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, this would be my second question now, and I just wanted to ask, as of now, is there any figure for how many students have been applied for public school for the first time because parents couldn't afford to continue with private education? Is there any of the idea of what that figure would be looking like?
Director, Ms. Sinclair, who will take the director?
Because of the COVID-19, we moved the registration process from going to the school process to an online process. And since we have undertaken that somewhere in the middle of, I think, June or July, we have had over 11,000 persons register, but most of those persons are persons who would have been in government schools already and just moving to another government school. So far we have not seen any great exodus from private schools. Now, as we get closer to the time, we will see what happens. But what we think from what we are hearing is that quite a number of persons will continue with the private schools, but also some interested in homeschooling. We have introduced an online process for homeschooling, and so that is just a new introduction. So we haven't really gotten much in the way of applications at this time. But we're confident that persons will register if they need to, and if they don't need to, they'll remain with the private schools where they are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Royston Jones from Eyewitness.
Good afternoon. My first question is, can you speak to the integrity of the national exams to resume? In September, the exams have started. A number of students have taken them. I'm not sure the exact number that have taken them. And I think there was some concerns expressed about the integrity of those exams, if they're the same, of course.
Undersecretary Clark.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your question. As it relates to the integrity of the national exams, those exams have been placed under tight security in the various schools where they are being kept. We don't have any concerns at this time to say that they have been compromised. The papers for which the students would have completed, those are also secured so that when marking begins, they would not have been tampered with by anyone. So at this stage, we do not have any reason to feel as though the exams have lost any integrity or any of the papers compromised. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, can we have your second question, please?
Certainly. I'm curious as to whether the students who took those exams previously could share some information with other students, but that's not my second question. The second question is, are laptops being supplied to teachers and administrators conducting virtual learning so that teaching and learning can be facilitated? The tablets don't always adequately operate as effectively as a laptop for them managing multiple systems. So how are teachers and administrators being supplied with electronic equipment to facilitate that?
ADE Sinclair will take that query.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for the question. They are already provided on our school campuses a number of devices, laptops as well as tablets for our teachers that they will be able to access. Ministry of Education has also decided, as was mentioned by the minister, to cooperate, partner with service providers on the country who are able to offer devices to students, to teachers, to administrators at a reasonable cost. So those who may not wish to have the regular PC, may want to have their Apple device, they are able to purchase these. As was mentioned also, the ministry has provided specifications for the kinds of devices, the memory, Wi-Fi ready, webcam, so that persons are able to purchase devices that can connect with the platforms that we will be utilizing during the school year. So we would have given those specifications in terms of the processor, in terms of the memory, in terms of the camera that the device should have. We have already made devices available on campus. Persons are also able to purchase at a low cost, a reasonable cost. And so those other provisions, even in terms of organizations coming in, stepping in and wanting to provide for teachers as well as students, those are the kinds of things that are happening on the ground. So we are confident that when we begin, we should have a number of devices that are available.
Okay, thank you very much, AD Sinclair. So we have come to the end of this press conference, but before we conclude, I just would like to say on behalf of the minister and all of us at the department and the Ministry of Education that we've spoken much about the importance of virtual learning in this COVID-19 era. And so we thank the members of corporate Bahamas and private citizens who have graciously volunteered to donate tablets to the Ministry of Education to ensure that as many students as possible who are certified by the Department of Social Services as having a need, we want to say thank you for those donations. And so I just want to say very briefly, we want to acknowledge some of those donors. In the first instance, His Excellency, the Most Honorable C.A. Smith, Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Leno Bahamas, Commonwealth Bank, Links Nassau Chapter, Dr. Barry Rassin, Mr. Carl Allen, philanthropist, the Lightfoot Key Foundation, the Commonwealth of Learning, Rotary Clubs, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, the Pan American Development Foundation, the One in Luther Foundation, the Bahamas Red Cross, Alive and Cable Bahamas, One-on-One and BTC. And we've also received inquiries from other citizens and residents who wish to donate. And so we welcome all of those donations. And if I've left out anybody who has donated, we certainly apologize. We appreciate all of you. And thank you very much for your participation and for bearing with us during this rather lengthy press conference.